What's going on YouTube? Aaron here, and in today's video we are going to be jumping back into the Bob Saget story. Now if you have followed my channel for a little while now, you'll know that I made two videos around the death of comedian and actor Bob Saget. Did I think I would make a third video? No, but when I heard that they were going to be coming out with a final report around the death of Bob Saget, I figured let's make a final video to kind of round off the series of videos that we've made talking about some of the things that were odd around the death of Bob Saget, and kind of put a close to this chapter of talking about it here on the channel. There's still a lot of people commenting on my first two videos day in and day out. I see those comments coming through. Some of them are wild to me, but you know, it's still interesting to hear what people have to say. There's still a lot of conspiracy and controversy around this story. But I'm going to go through the third and final, or I should say just the final report here for this third video. If you haven't seen my first two videos, I will link them in cards up above, as well as in the description down below. But for this video, let's just hop in to the final report around Bob Saget's death. So this article says, Orange County Sheriff's Office final report reaffirms no foul play in Bob Saget's death. This report came out on Tuesday, March 15th, by the way. I'm recording this on March 20th. So this report hasn't even been out a week. The Orange County Sheriff's Office issued a final report into the death of Bob Saget on Tuesday and said it will comply with a court-ordered permanent injunction blocking the release of additional details of the comedian's untimely death. Quote, yesterday, a court order was entered prohibiting the release of certain materials gathered during the course of the Orange County Sheriff's Office investigation into the death of Bob Saget. The Orange County Sheriff's Office will comply with the order while remaining committed to transparency and following the law regarding access to public records. Saget's family filed a lawsuit last month against Orange County's sheriff and the medical examiner's office, requesting that some investigation records related to his death be exempt from being revealed publicly. A Florida judge granted a permanent injunction Monday blocking the release of additional records related to the death investigation, CNN previously reported. According to the OCSO's final incident report on Saget's death, also released Tuesday, Saget's family requested security at the Ritz-Carlton in Orlando conduct a wellness check on Saget on his checkout date of January 9th after they were unable to get a hold of him or reach him. This is all something that we talked about in those first two videos. Hotel security contacted local authorities after finding Saget unresponsive and cold to the touch. Responding authorities found the room in order with, quote, no evidence of a struggle, any type of foul play, or anyone else in the room at any time during his stay. So we talked about this in the last video because a lot of people were curious as to whether or not Saget entered the hotel, or his room for that matter, alone. Were they able to confirm that through security camera footage at the hotel? And it sounds like through all of this, local authorities were able to determine all of those things. He did enter the room himself. No one else was with him. And they kind of confirmed everything, matched up with the timeline of when he would have been coming back from his show earlier that night. It says, Mr. Saget was lying on his back on the right side of the bed, partially covered by the sheet and bedspread, with his left arm lying loosely across his torso and his right arm by his side. The sheets, bedspread, and pillowcases on the bed were white, and there were no signs of blood, bodily fluids on them, or anything else in the suite, the report says, adding Saget appeared to have slight swelling and a bruise over his left eye. Now that's something that I didn't catch in a previous report or an article or anything in reading into Bob Saget's death, because that was one thing that stood out to me as odd. And they are saying here that there were no signs of blood or fluids anywhere else in the suite. And I just found it to be somewhat odd with the reports coming out from different neurosurgeons talking about the injuries that Saget had sustained in being compared to people that they had seen had been beat by baseball bats or fallen from 20 to 30 feet. They were comparing those same injuries to injuries that Bob had sustained. And so I just thought it's so strange that there was no blood found anywhere in the hotel. But it does say, and this is the thing that I missed, that Saget appeared to have slight swelling over his left eye. So that, I guess, was confirmed. The report also notes that while the door between the room adjoining Saget's was unlocked, the occupying guests checked out 2 days before, and there was no evidence of entry afterwards. So a lot of people actually DM'd me on Twitter, and they were like, oh my gosh, the room connected to Bob's room was unlocked. But if they were able to confirm that there were no guests, I guess the only person that may have been in that room was someone who cleaned the room in between the guests. So it wouldn't have, I don't think, been occupied by anyone. And like I said, it would have just been a hotel staff that possibly could have been in that room while Bob was there. The report says Saget's room was opened shortly after 2 a.m. local time on January 9th, a time consistent with his departure from his show in Jacksonville that night, and not opened again until around 4 p.m. by hotel security coming in to check on him the next morning. So like what we talked about in the previous video, and even the first video, we timed out about how long the drive from Jacksonville after his show on the 8th would have taken. It does make sense for him to coming back to the Ritz-Carlton around 2 a.m. It was a pretty decent drive back to Orlando, where he had a show the night before. Because some people were also messaging me, why did he come back to Orlando? And it's like, he stayed there the night before. He was going to be going back down to southern Florida for shows later in the month. It may not have made sense for him to just stay in Jacksonville. So we know that he sent his final tweet at 3:42 a.m. So that all kind of lines up to him being found maybe 12 hours later after that tweet was sent at 4 p.m. by hotel security. Quote, no one entered or left his room until security entered that afternoon at the request of his family. So we know that his family wasn't able to get a hold of him on the day he was supposed to check out, and they requested the wellness check. 4 legally prescribed medications were found in Saget's luggage, the report says. An autopsy conducted the following day by Chief Medical Examiner Joshua Stephanie found a fracture at the base of Mr. Saget's skull, the evidence of bleeding around the brain, and demonstrated the transfer of force that broke the orbital bone at the front of the skull. So that was something we talked about in a previous video as well, is just how badly he was injured. And they talk about how, hitting your head in just the right spot can cause orbital breaks all over. Stephanie explained that the amount of force necessary to cause the fracture, coupled with the fact that the skin on the back of the head was still intact, led him to believe that the injury was most likely caused by something hard covered by something soft. And he gave, as an example, a fall onto a carpeted floor. So maybe a floor that had, some flooring that was really hard underneath, but carpet on the top. So possibly not a slip in the bathroom, or maybe a slip near the bathroom where it was tile or marble or whatever the case may be, and then maybe he hit his head on a towel over the marble floor. That's another thing that could have happened. But yeah, the skin did not break, which, anything is possible, obviously, but I found that to be not weird, but for the amount of injuries he had, it seemed like he would have bled externally. But you never know. Stephanie concluded such a blow would have, quote, stunned Saget and caused symptoms such as dizziness, confusion, and slurred speech. Stephanie told investigators Saget would not have been able to drive the 2 hours back from Jacksonville he reportedly did in his rental car after sustaining such a traumatic brain injury. So that answers another couple of questions, which was he driving himself from Jacksonville? Did he have a small team, maybe like a touring team with him? And so it pretty much confirms that the fall would have had to have happened at the hotel, not somewhere between the show and the hotel, the Ritz-Carlton in Orlando. They're saying he would not have been able to drive back the 2+ hours from Jacksonville. Following the autopsy, investigators returned to the hotel to re-examine the scene, to locate specific places or items in the room that could have caused the trauma. Nothing definitive was identified, the report said. Stephanie noted Saget's head injury likely occurred within a few hours of his death, but could have occurred in the days prior, the report says. A number of interviews conducted by authorities with people who interacted with Saget in his final days produced no evidence of drug or alcohol use or any behavior out of the ordinary. So kind of weird, especially if they found bruising above his left eye. You would think that someone at the Orlando show, the Ritz-Carlton, or the Jacksonville show would have been like, hey, are you okay? You've got like a huge bruise above your eye. So they're saying that obviously it could have occurred in the days prior, but likely it happened within a few hours of his actual death. So a photo taken at the request of the valet at the Ritz-Carlton in Orlando in the early morning hours on January 9th shows no visual evidence of injury or trauma to Saget's face. So here's that photo from the valet worker at the Ritz-Carlton. It said valet worker Orlando Nunez took a selfie with Bob Saget and told Daily Mail that he didn't see any injuries. He didn't seem hurt. He wasn't slurring his words. He was exactly as I remembered him while watching him on TV as a child. So this is that photo that was requested by a valet worker there at the Ritz-Carlton. And yeah, I mean, Bob Saget looks completely fine here. I don't think there's any sort of swelling above his left eye socket at all. The cause of death was determined to be blunt head trauma. The manner of death was determined to be an accident, the report says. So that's the article. That's what I believe will be kind of the final piece coming from both law enforcement and the connecting agencies to this story. Obviously, we have medical examiners being quoted in this final report. Of course, there's going to be people online, both on YouTube, Twitter, and beyond, talking more about this case. There's, of course, going to be suspicions around that door being unlocked and how that's strange, and the fact that even someone working at the hotel could have entered or let somebody in. But if all of this was confirmed with hotel security and local law enforcement, that no one else entered the room, no one was suspiciously in the room next to his that wasn't supposed to be, I think it truly is one of those situations that was just a freak accident. And, if you haven't seen my first two videos, you'll know why I started talking about the Bob Saget story in the first place. And it's just because I think the way that it was reported initially of not indicating any of these head injuries first was just strange. It was kind of just ruled, or people thought, oh, he had a heart attack. And that's because of the early reports that came out around his family history of that. And so do I think that there's anything suspicious around the death of Bob Saget? Probably not. I don't think so. I think this kind of confirms that. Was it interesting to follow along because of the way it was reported and because of things that weren't reported early on? I definitely think that that's why I followed along with this. But what are your thoughts? I'd like to know down in the comments below. I will be down there responding and looking at what you guys have to say. This will be the final video unless something crazy comes out around the Bob Saget story in the coming weeks or months. But that'll probably do it for this story. If you have followed me just because of the Bob Saget stuff and you want to know more about what I do, I will link a couple of other videos down in the description of other cases and things that I follow. This is kind of a missing persons / true crime channel where we follow all of those different kinds of things. So if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. And I will see you guys in the next video or the next live stream. All right. See you guys.